Thank you for joining us for the SZ4D Town Hall. I am Emily Brodsky. I am chair of SZ4D, chair of the steering committee. And our goal today is to just generally provide a little bit of an update about what SZ4D has been up to and provide an opportunity for comments, feedback, questions, clarifications to whoever would like to know. So thank you very much for engaging and being interested. And I will start out with just a very quick, what is SZ4D? And what is SZ4D now? I know SZ4D as a word and a phrase and an has been around for a while, starting back in a 2017 report coming out of the meeting in Boise, and then it has evolved into an organization that has a whole lot of committees. And these days, it's an initiative that is pushing out a lot of proposals. And so let me try to give some sort of thumbnail sketch of what SZ4D is at this moment in time, which is SZ4D, first of all, stands for Subduction Zones in 4 Dimensions. It's a community-driven initiative for long-term interdisciplinary research to understand the limits and possibilities of predicting geohazards. Limits come first. Nobody's promising to predict magnitude 8 earthquakes, but we do know that some geohazards like volcanic eruptions are often predicted. Others we have failed, and we want to know where those lines are. What is possible, what is not. In order to embark on this adventure, we the group has identified subduction zones as the ideal natural laboratory, and multifaceted infrastructure and other resources that are required to enable new discoveries. That's what we're trying to build, bringing together a diverse community of scientists from a wide range of disciplines. And when we talk about geohazards, we mean earthquakes, we need volcanic eruptions, and we mean a broad range of catastrophic surface processes. And so this sort of vision statement has resulted in a lot of activities, a lot of meetings and workshops and reports and community meetings and small virtual webinars here in the US, in Chile, more about Chile in a moment, and actually around the world. And so SZ4D has been extremely busy. We have been generously funded by the National Science Foundation to hold these workshops and meetings and planning activities. Large-scale projects and large-scale visions require quite a lot of communication and coordination and development and design. And so NSF has recognized this and supported it, for which we are grateful. This resulted, the original research coordination network resulted in an implementation report released in November 2022 after a year-long vetting process of the draft in public, and that in a multi-year process leading up to that draft. That more about the implementation report shortly. We've had a number of workshops and meetings. We have, as of June 1, funding through the AccelNet program for an international collaboration through the SZNet structure. SZNet is a configuration that really has 2 parts to it. It is specifically a partnership with Chile with a lot of in-person field schools and pilot projects to enable collaboration. And in addition to that, it is a broader collaboration about subduction zones around the world to exchange information and insights. And that larger international collaboration is largely a virtual one, as one might expect when we start talking globally. We've partnered with AndesNet. Again, more about AndesNet shortly. AndesNet is a collaboration of Chilean and Argentinian scientists that arose out of our first joint meeting in Chile in 2022, and then reconvened in 2023. And Cristian Farías will give us an update from them in a few moments. If nothing else, SZ4D is committees. We've launched committees engaging over 135 scientists. We have an annual volunteer call. It just closed on Monday. If you missed it, by all means, volunteer again next year. But there's over 80 people who have volunteered this year, and we will continue to refresh those committees every year. And we will not use all 80 people this year because we want to be able to continue to refresh committees every year. So if you don't get on a committee this year, I guarantee it'll happen eventually. Just keep on at it. We need all the volunteers we can. And also, again, we'll hear more about building equity and capacity and our communication efforts. All right, so that's all this stuff that all these people are doing, but why? What are we actually trying to accomplish? What do we need to do to make a real difference in defining the limits and possibilities of prediction? That can be summarized very concisely by we need to capture events in context. If we are looking at geohazards, we need to capture events, often events that happen rarely, because those are the important ones. So capturing events requires long-term systematic instrumentation, requires arrays in an extremely active part of the Earth. And context requires collaborative, interdisciplinary regional focus. Context requires geology, requires modeling, it requires the instruments being on top of each other, or at least coordinated in a way so we have the whole picture. And so that is really what SZ4D is trying to do. And so the implementation report suggests that, recommends, I don't think it's a good deal stronger than a suggestion, that this can be accomplished by 3 overlapping integrated arrays called mega array, bulk array, and surf array, addressing the earthquake, volcanic, and surface processes problems. And although those are articulated as 3 separate arrays, actually, if you read what they are, on a lot of places, they're the same actual physical instruments. We actually made a budgeting mistake at one point by separating them out and then realizing that they were overlapping and we had double counted everything. So they're physically often the same instruments, but they do address, and it's useful to think about them as addressing these 3 separate sets of hazards. In addition, the implementation report articulates activities, which is sort of used in a kind of technical sense within the implementation part to mean things that are not arrays, everything we need to do to provide context. And so how to get the most out of these arrays to capture events in context? Up to now, I've been talking about them separately. I just pointed out to you that actually in many cases they are the same physical instruments. And so sometimes we even refer to the overlap area as multi-array, and that's another term. If you hang out with SZ4D committees, you'll hear the term multi-array thrown around, and it just means the overlap. So the implementation report very carefully goes through science questions first and science motivation first, and an abstract idea of what should be done first before embarking on geography. That is a purposeful strategic decision to make sure the science is clearly in our minds. The implementation report then goes on to say that this would be most effective in a place that is extremely geologically active and geopolitically feasible and logistically feasible, and identifies Chile as the site for the arrays, but also points out that Cascadia and Alaska are our domestic subduction zone as an NSF-funded entity. We are certainly obligated to address domestic risk and hazard, and the strategy laid out in the implementation report is to use Chile as sort of a test lab, a sped up version of the system that is quite accessible, and that sped up version of the system should provide insights that we use those activities to port back to the US problems. What we have been busy doing those SZ4D committees in the last year is noting that Chile is a big place and that we need some more specificity of what we're trying to accomplish in Chile. And that has been a complicated process involving engaging working groups within SZ4D and engaging deeply with AndesNet, who really are the regional experts and know what the problems and issues and opportunities are in Chile. The results of this, and specifically where in Chile, the sort of rubric to try to figure out what we wanted to do in Chile was that the key criteria is what places in Chile can provide the most control of the number of variables while speeding up at the rate and improving accessibility so that we can ultimately learn at the process level useful insights for Cascadia, Alaska. We're not trying to make Cascadia in Chile. That we have Cascadia. We're trying to learn about the processes and also are generalizable. And so this resulted in a process where we broke up Chile into numbered segments. We asked different groups in different configurations with different expertise, both internally to SZ4D and internally to AndesNet, and then cross-talking about that and reaching out more broadly to try to consider from various angles the relative merits of each of these segments. And the net result of all of this discussion, it was the AndesNet recommendation a couple weeks ago at an in-person meeting in Termas El Corazon. Cristian will walk through more carefully the AndesNet process leading up to that meeting. It was not just an in-person discussion, it was multiple virtual pre-meetings with multiple virtual pre-surveys, as well as multiple surveys within SZ4D, and then combining all that information into this final recommendation, which, as I said, I'll let him discuss, but basically is a combination of arrays more or less in central Chile with an overlap area, which some people seem to like to call the Tetris piece, if you are a Tetris fan. Okay, I'll let Cristian discuss that recommendation, but it's a huge accomplishment and milestone that we now actually have a little bit of specificity within Chile. The AndesNet, what then happened after the AndesNet meeting is the SZ4D steering committee voted on the AndesNet recommendation and voted unanimously to accept that, and that accept it in the sense as it is a starting point for any future design and planning activities. We fully recognize that that is a cartoon. I am certain the boundaries will be adjusted as more information emerges, but that's all future planning will start as that with that as the initial condition. Which now puts us in a place to ask where do we go from here? I have put on the screen a fairly generic document from NSF's Research Infrastructure Guide, the RIG, which is how NSF thinks about major instrumentation processes. And according to their kind of planning, we're sort of on the tail end of the development stage, which is about a 10-year process. And that's kind of where we are of building the idea and the concept. We would like very much to get from into the design phase. With design in this NSF sense means serious engineering design, not conceptual or moving past the conceptual phase. And then ultimately for major facilities, typically this leads to, again, this is a generic figure, several years of construction and several decades of operation. More specifically for SZ4D, where are we? We are at the tail end of spring of 2023. This is a timeline that was made prior to that, but fortunately, we're still on track on this timeline. We have defined blobs on a map which was the subject line of Anais's email to the SZ4D mailing list last night. Blobs is a kind of casual term, perhaps, for what we're doing. What we really mean is zones, where we can do the arrays. And that was our big goal for this spring, was to make sure that happened, and it has happened. And we're now soliciting community feedback, making sure this town hall was scheduled specifically as soon as possible after the steering committee decision, so that we can get feedback, make sure we haven't messed it up, because we're totally capable of messing things up, and we would like you to tell us if we have. But assuming we have not, we're going to start moving towards array design, which means we're going to start modeling, given that zone, given those blobs and a certain number of instruments, how do we spread them out? What's that really going to cost? Does it meet the science goals? And how do we then use that information to iterate and improve upon our design? And that's the process we're moving into now as far as the instruments are concerned. This focus on the instruments, I think, has sort of taken some time on SZ4D committees away from activities. And we would like to do a bit of a course correction at this point as well, and start defining priority activities. That is, the summer project for the SZ4D committees is just work on those committees activities that are going to make the data useful and make science as opposed to just bits and machine. And specifically, we are aiming to target a geohazard center proposal in spring of 2024, and we are going to try to define the priority activities that will be encapsulated in that geohazard center proposal. That's kind of the game plan there. And then in terms of the instrumentation in the arrays, that's on a somewhat different track. We are targeting a mid-scale research infrastructure implementation proposal spring of 2025, and this timeline is designed to hit that target. I spoke fast, but hopefully I got it all out there. So today's agenda for the town hall was starting with this overview that I just gave you. And which hit mainly instrumentation, but a little bit of activities. Cristian, again, is going to walk you through the AndesNet process with and give their perspective on both instrumentation activity. And then as part of this pivot, much of what we're going to spend this town hall talking about is in fact activities. And although we'd like feedback on anything, we're hoping the conversation moves in that direction. Thank you very much. I believe we're saving Q&A for in the chat and the end. By all means, if you have a question right away about what I just said, stick it in the Q&A chat tool thing, and I will try to answer it as soon as I get off the screen. Okay. Anais, we're ready to move on?
Sure. So now, please, Cristian, can you share your screen? And while Cristian is sharing his screen, I just wanted to remind everyone that if you are not receiving our listserv yet, I'm going to paste the link in the chat, and subscribe so you can stay updated.
Oh, and I also remembered, I totally forgot to say that we have closed captions enabled. Just hit the CC at the bottom of your screen. And that closed captions are available in English and Spanish. They translate. So just pick your favorite language, and whatever language the person's speaking, it'll translate to the other one. So it's a really neat, I love this thing. So feel free to use it. All right, thanks. Cristian.
Okay, thank you very much for the introduction, Emily, and for all the notes about what we are doing in AndesNet. So first of all, I'm Cristian Farías. I work at the Universidad Católica de Temuco in the south of Chile. Recently, we got a lot of rain and flooding and landslides over the last weekend, so this country is a bit complicated at this moment. So we are going to, now I just want to present to you the main results of the whole process that we have been going with AndesNet and SZ4D. So the idea is to talk about the main recommendation and how we got there, pretty much. And well, the idea basically is to obtain the recommendation for the geographical location of the arrays following by a list of activities. That was the objective. That is the objective in many ways, because the list of activities, of course, is a bit more complicated than that. But to do this, we carried out some pre-meeting work. And during this pre-meeting work that took a couple of months, we set up an initial survey to gather the vision of the whole Chilean community about which were the best places for array locations in terms, based on basically whatever they liked at the beginning. Afterwards, we started to present the results in several meetings, online meetings, before the Termaster Corazon meeting that happened 2 weeks ago. And for that, we identified 3 different groups that wanted to present the results in more detail. So they started to say why they liked one place, why they liked another one, and we started the conversation from there on. And these groups presented the rationale both at a plenary meeting in online and also in Termaster Corazon. But in Termaster Corazon, we also gave the opportunity for anybody pretty much in the community to present what they wanted to say about which place was the good place for an array location. And you have to keep in mind that AndesNet is currently a community formed by more than 130 scientists, particularly from Chile and a couple from Argentina. And right now, and at the meeting on Termaster Corazon, we did have around 60 of them. So we have a lot of representation of AndesNet in that meeting in particular, because that was the main idea at the beginning. So in the meeting, we presented these results. And we created breakouts to define the overlapping array configurations. And for this, we tend to think about where mega array is coming, where mega array is going, where volcano array is supposed to be, and where surf array is supposed to be. So the idea was to create overlapping configurations in between them. Originally, the idea was to create the breakouts to get these ideas, then to create 5 different overlapping options, and then vote. We wanted to vote twice, first from going from 5 to 3, and then to have a prioritization of that. And let's see how it went. So at the beginning, we set up 5. Those were the main 5 configurations, each one of these orange zones. And in all of these cases, the place located more to the west is always mega array, because we want to pick up large earthquakes in Chile. And if we go to the vote, we can see that out of those 5 configurations, only 3 really got votes, which are configuration A, D, and E. There was a good friend of mine that voted for C, and I'm not going to say who he was, but anyway. But the thing is that he was pretty much alone in that view. And for that, we went into the voting for these other ones. And as you can see, it wasn't even close. The configuration A got the vast majority of the votes, but also we can see that configuration C, the one in the middle, sorry, configuration D, the one in the middle, it's pretty similar to configuration A. So basically, everybody was thinking on very similar terms. The second part of the story is that we also ask a lot about where other sections, where other zones of Chile were good for installing different arrays, and why, which places are, outside these overlapping zones, and see what we can do with them. So we did this. This is just a way to visualize what people were thinking, and all these extra bubbles are based on the comments from people. And this is a much ordered way of looking at this. You can see the overlapping configuration mainly on orange. Then the pink one are the suggested mega array extensions, the ones that are more the ones that are more dark. are the ones that got the most number of votes, let's say, or most the ones that were more mentioned. Same thing with volcano array, and then you can have something of surf array. And then the thing is, people really wanted the overlapping configuration, but also people didn't want to abandon Lascar and Hudson. Those are very important volcanoes to the Chile community, and they don't really like to leave those volcanoes behind. And also people ask for add some pieces of the race into the north and to the south. So talking about expanding mega array a little bit and extending into Argentina. Also, the idea of include a fast array was discussed a lot. And a fast array is basically a smaller array that you can move around as you like. If you have an event that is not on this region that is being covered with the current arrays, you can pick up this fast array and deploy these things really quickly. Also, if something happens in a place that maybe doesn't have too many instruments close, you can do the same. So that was an idea. The extension into Argentina was another one, but this was more a little bit more vague. It was only extended into Argentina, but not really talking about how. And those are details that we need to figure out. But then, if we go into activities, we have around 30, so we have a lot. So I'm just going to go through a couple of those of things that are not array related activities, but rather things that we want to do, things that we can do. And you can see the list. We talk on things more related to geohazards, sediment cores for paleoseismic and paleovolcanic records, seismic tomography, that is something really important for people, landslide and mass wasting inventories, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that in terms of that people really want some inventories and some database where we can store everything that we know. And we also need to monitor particular potential creeping landslides. We need to improve in terms of numerical analog modeling. That's something that we talk a lot about as well. And we need to model, basically model, and we need to carry out experiments. And also the fast array ones again and again. And in terms of things not so related to geohazards, the creation of data catalogs was a big thing, a really big thing. We need to create more connections across disciplines within AndesNet, although the community is not so large, but still we need to create more connections, and we need to build capacities in the modeling community in Chile. That community is a bit underrepresented at this moment because we don't have too many people that actually is modeling too much, but we need to build the whole capacity, human capacity, and of course infrastructure capacity. And we need to engage more in student exchange programs, and yeah, we could use some computational power collaboration with other people and laboratory measurements of physical properties of rocks. So those are basically, and I think I'm at the end, yes, those are basically the recommendations that we have in terms of in terms of the geographical sense. These are the arrays. This is what we want to do pretty much, and we are starting from there and see what exactly we can do, and also with the activities that of course are work in progress that we need to keep on going and keep on doing them. So thank you very much for your time. That was the review that I wanted to make.
Thank you, Cristian. Mike, would you like to share your screen now? Thank you.
Sure. We have a full agenda, so I'll keep us moving. The next section that we wanted to talk about is our efforts to create collective impact with SZ4D, and in particular, wanted to introduce you to the Collective Impact Committee if you've not met us yet. I'm co-chairing that with Magali and Danielle, but have a host of great people that are helping us to make progress on building collective impact in SZ4D. I'm going to talk some more about why and how here in my presentation, but if there are aspects that you'd like to hear some more about, please feel free to reach out to any of us on the committee. We'd be happy to talk to you about it and our perspectives on what it's taking to try and create this. So I'm going to start with where this sort of came from. Why are we bothering with collective impact? And it came from our building equity and capacity with Geoscience Integrative Group, BECG. And they identified a set of goals, things like equity and hazard mitigation, interdisciplinary collaboration, international capacity building, and others here that are listed as sort of critical for SZ4D to be successful long-term, and that there was a need to really transform the mindset of our community to really embrace these as just as integral as the physical science research that we do. So in thinking about how to accomplish these goals, BCG followed the similar path to other working groups to do a traceability matrix approach. And from that identified a set of needs that would need to be met in order to accomplish those goals. That's what's sort of shown here in the center. And then also a set of activities that would likely help to accomplish those needs. So again, identify just a set of common set of things that came up multiple times as we looked at different goals. Yeah, we're back to, again, some of these same needs and some of the same activities that would help us to get there. Those needs really sort of helped us to focus in on, what is it that we're looking for to be able to accomplish more of this building equity and capacity? And this is what led us to the collective impact idea. So the definition of collective impact is up here at the top. It comes from the social science research. And it's defined as the commitment of people from different sectors to a common agenda for solving a social problem using a structured form of collaboration. And folks that have been studying collective impact over the past decade have identified 5 criteria that are particularly important in accomplishing collective impact. That's what's shown here in the center: this common agenda, shared measurement systems, mutually reinforcing activities, continuous communication, and a backbone support organization. These elements tend to be present when organizations and groups or communities are working together in a way that it helps to achieve collective impact. And so we recognize that these 4 here at the top match almost identically to the needs that were identified to be able to accomplish those BCG goals, right? The measurement, development, improving communication, establish partnerships, and a common agenda across disciplines. This was done independently, right? We developed these in our traceability matrix approach before finding out about collective impact. Our social science colleagues pointed us to this, I think in part because we had identified needs that match with it. We also envisioned that, SZ4D can serve as a backbone support organization if we can sustain it over decades, right? That's the goal of SZ4D. So it seems to be a really good match, and therefore something we wanted to pursue. So as SZ4D has evolved, it created a collective impact committee to specifically focus on trying to build this within what SZ4D is doing, right? So again, to try and work with the working groups and integrative groups, as well as with the steering committee, to try and create that throughout how SZ4D functions. So again, helpful to have a group of people that they're focused on this and thinking about how to do this, but still the aspect of how do we accomplish it is something that we've had to grapple with. So I think one of the ways we might sort of envision how are we planning to accomplish collective impact? Well, we can go through each of these sort of 5 criteria. The first one, the common agenda, I think that's in many ways been accomplished by the implementation plan, right? The work that was done over several years to put together that long document that was done through our working groups and our integrative groups. It was done collectively in our community. But again, part of the reason we're having a town hall today is to ensure that we're continuing to collect community input to make sure that we're in agreement on the agenda. Then the next 3, the shared measurement, the mutually reinforcing activities, and the continuous communication, we envision that the collective impact committee can be focused on trying to develop these aspects within SZ4D, but it needs to be done in concert with the other working groups and integrative groups, right? We can't just decide on what all the activities are. We need to work with those groups to sort of identify what kinds of activities would be mutually beneficial. And then ultimately, we can rely on SZ4D as a center to help us, again, to create that backbone support organization, but also in helping us with continuous communication, right? Anais has done a tremendous job with helping to make sure that we communicate information out more broadly, but I think we're also making changes in how we do committee processes. We're trying to make agendas and meeting notes more readily available to our community so that we can sort of better integrate information across our different groups. But I think perhaps the most important thing going forward is proposals, right? The only way we're going to sort of accomplish these aspects of collective impact, right, is to submit proposals that have collective impact as a key component of what we're seeking, right? So our committee, the Collective Impact Committee, can help with sort of facilitating that proposal process, but it really sort of goes back to PIs and scientists and researchers, our social science colleagues, all working together to create those proposals in a way that are helping to achieve collective impact. So the charge of our Collective Impact Committee has been thinking about, how can we help to do this, right? So the sort of one sentence sort of description for us has been to identify and sustain scientific priorities and broader impacts by coordinating scientific and capacity building activities, right? So from that, I think we have identified three main pieces, right? This prioritization and coordination, an assessment of the impact, and reporting and communication. I think you'll see that those three relatively match well with the aspects of collective impact in terms of the mutually beneficial activities, the shared measurement, and the continuous communication, right? That we're thinking of each of those three things as we sort of think about how we can function as a committee to try and help SZ4D. So I want to give a couple examples of things that we have been working on to illustrate how this works in practice. So a key example is this refinement of our Cascadia and Alaska activities and instrumentation list. So this started as SZ4D putting out a broad call to collect ideas for activities and instrumentation in our domestic sites into a single document with sort of similar format that would sort of help us to sort of see what are our opportunities, particularly in relation to how they would complement efforts that would happen in Chile and Argentina, right? So that was sort of the call, and it generated a lot of sort of input, but it was far-reaching, it was irregular, and so our committee was asked to help synthesize that list, looking to identify synergies, missing pieces, what a specific coordination needs, and opportunities to do more integrated science. A lot of what got contributed was from particular working groups. So our committee worked on that and has issued a set of a synthesis document on that. But we also put together a recommendation for a process to continue the evaluation, right? There are some missing pieces, there are some additional needs. So we need to continue that evaluation, particularly in terms of prioritization. And we also need to increase the communication across our groups and with existing efforts that are out in the community, right? So that we can sort of better coordinate those activities and have a more integrated package when we propose it. So again, these are key aspects that we've just recently put out to the working groups in SZ4D, and you should anticipate sort of hearing some more about that in the coming months. Again, I think what you can see here is reinforcing these three main things, trying to help with prioritization and coordination, trying to help with assessing, are we achieving what we want, and then communicating and trying to improve how we do that. Another example has been that we put together some guidance for proposals in coordinating with SZ4D, right? So we clearly anticipate, right, that the SZ4D community is going to need to put in multiple sort of proposals to help fund building the structures that would achieve what's written in the implementation plan, right? And so collective impact sort of tells us that, and advises us that we need to build pieces that are designed to be fully integrated in terms of how the research and capacity building goals are met, rather than just trying to do them in disparate efforts, right? So, trying to do that in an integrated way is not easy, particularly in that we don't have a single program at NSF that we can sort of submit proposals to that would sort of ask for those integrated pieces, right? So we have to do that as a community. And so we put together a set of questions that could help PIs as they're designing proposals to try and look towards achieving collective impact, right? So I'm not going to sort of go through the detailed list here, but you can see each one of these questions is related to those criteria for collective impact, as well as for things like belonging, accessibility, justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, and thinking about sort of mutually beneficial international collaborations, right? So trying to be mindful of those things as well. So this set of questions is up on our part of the SZ4D webpage. But again, we would encourage folks to reach out to our committee, to help with trying to do that coordination piece. If you have a proposal that you're interested in trying to coordinate with SZ4D, we would be happy to talk to you about it and offer suggestions and guidance. All right, so ultimately, yeah, my takeaway message is, again, we're just trying to use collective impact as a way to help coordinate, right? To take sort of efforts that might be more disparate, moving in different directions, and try to help them be more aligned so that we can coordinate our research and capacity building. All right, thanks.
Thank you, Mike. Let's move on to Cristian, who's going to present a brief update on GeoArray.
Hi, thank you. My name is Cristian Regalla, and I'm going to be giving an update on behalf of the SZ4D GeoArray team. So GeoArray is an ongoing initiative to enable mechanisms to allow for collective field geology approaches for large-scale subduction zone science. And so I'm just going to first start off with the basic tenet that answering SZ4D science questions requires large amounts of field geologic data. We need to be able to collect, analyze, and integrate large amounts of data from a diverse range of geoscience disciplines to be able to characterize the fundamental processes underlying subduction zone hazards, like volcanic eruptions, lahars, flooding, landslides, earthquakes, tsunami. And we need these geologic data to understand these processes' variability in space and time. A lot of these processes are operating over longer time periods than we can image with instrumentation, or even over a single human lifetime. But there's a problem in that these sort of large-scale community efforts are not common in field geoscience, at least in the US, and we lack mechanisms and support structures to be able to enable effective large-scale interdisciplinary field geoscience research. And developing mechanisms to be able to enable this in SZ4D would be one of the most potentially transformative aspects of our goals. And so because this is not something that is traditionally done, we've been talking to the community a lot and trying to get feedback about how we would go about this process. So there's been a series of discussions during the RCN stage of SZ4D, as well as a series of town halls and workshops. And a set of about 3 priority needs have been evolving. And the first is that we need to be able to provide opportunities for community scale research in the geosciences. And we need this to be able to enable knowledge transfer between subdisciplines and to accelerate the pace of discovery. And we also need this to foster new collaborations among diverse geoscientists. We also need human infrastructure to support PI coordination, logistics, safety, shipping, and data archival, and physical infrastructure to support field stations, vehicles, and equipment, sample repository, and data management strategies. And so we have kind of some high level overarching goals here. And one of the kind of the main goals of the GeoArray initiative is to enable the effective collaborative collection of interdisciplinary geoscience data at large scale. And we aim to accomplish this by establishing matchmaking and team building mechanisms that foster interdisciplinary research and knowledge transfer, bridging not just the field geosciences, but across modeling, laboratory, and geophysical disciplines. And we want to be able to host collaborative data collection campaigns and workshops, both in the field and out of the field. And in order to be able to do this well, this kind of large-scale community field geoscience approach, there are several components that are essential for its success. And one is that as an organization, we need to be able to provide support to enable safe, inclusive, and accessible field experiences. We need to provide mechanisms to recruit and train new participants and increase the diversity of scientists participating in SZ4D field research. And we need to promote effective collaborative discourse at all stages of research, from project design to data collection and analysis and eventual publication. So these are some pretty big goals and some high goals and some long-term goals. So what are we working on right now? What are our first steps? And so I want to share with you a brief overview of some of our current efforts. One is that we are looking to partner with SZNet, and this was a proposal that Emily mentioned at the beginning, an ExcelNet proposal that has been funded to help develop networks between subduction zone scientists in the US and South America and globally. And we want to partner with them on upcoming international field trips to test some of the mechanisms that we're working on to develop more inclusive participant recruitment and applicant evaluation to help broaden who gets to have access to these field opportunities. and to evaluate collaborative practices across various disciplines, institutions, and international partners using field observations and surveys in collaboration with our social science research partners. We're also working on developing a pilot proposal to test different mechanisms of how can we initiate and foster collaborative field work within the geosciences. And I'm going to share with you kind of two project ideas that we've been working on that test two different modes of field geoscience collaboration. And so the first example, project A, we've been calling it the IODP model. For those of you familiar with that program, that's a good analogy. And in this model, we envision that participants would apply to be a part of an interdisciplinary team to develop sampling and data gathering strategies to answer a common question. And we'd like to test this at a pilot site in Cascadia, where there's an exhumed subduction interface complex within the Condrey Mountain schist in the Klamath Mountains. This is a good site to focus on because it has pressure temperature conditions similar to those that generate deep slow slip in Cascadia and other margins. So the idea here would be to put a collaborative team of geoscientists together that includes petrologists, structural geologists, geochronologists, geochemists, modelers, geophysicists, all together in the field on the same outcrop, designing their sample collection and analysis plan. And they'll be able to address research questions like what controls the speed and mode of slip on the deep subduction interface? What would be the equivalent geophysical signatures of this kind of plate interface? And how do material transformations along this interface impact our source materials? Our second project idea, right now we're calling this a research incubator. And the idea here is to organize PI efforts to help them collect seed data for projects that contribute to critical components of the system. And so the motivation here is that a lot of the research that's going to move SZ4D forward is going to be taken up by people like you here in the meeting, doing your own research, putting in proposals. And can we motivate or organize the community to come together in these focus areas to develop interdisciplinary projects that help us fill critical components of the system to actually answer these science questions? And so again, we want to test this in a pilot site in the Cascadia Fork on the Eureka coast, focusing on questions about linking energy transfer from the plate interface to the upper plate. And again, this would be kind of an amphibious effort, bringing together onshore and offshore geoscientists, modelers, geophysicists, laboratory scientists to work together on interdisciplinary projects through a field-based workshop where we're helping scientists collect seed data, helping kind of bring down some of these barriers to entry to doing field geoscience in a new location. And this group can work on questions including what portion of energy input through convergence is converted to permanent strain? How do variations in roughness, coupling, and upper plate rheology impact strain accumulation? And how do these processes impact future energy release in events like earthquakes or landslides? And so that's our very quick summary here. We do want to hear from you if you have feedback or questions or ideas. Of course, you can use the chat or the Q&A function here, or set a question to sc4d.org on the website.
Thank you very much, Christine. Let's move on to Aubrey, who will be presenting on SZ4 grads.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Aubrey Laplante. I am a PhD student at NAU, and I am an executive member of the SZ4 grads group. So this group grew out of a collection of early career researchers in the spring of 2022 who wanted to maintain an active participation in the shaping of the SZ4D community. So in the last year, our goals have revolved around creating and maintaining a network of graduate students and recent graduate students, and providing a platform for ECR growth and involvement in the growing beast that is SZ4D. So in the last year, the original four-person executive committee has grown to be 10 of us who dedicate several hours each week to growing the community, and we have over 200 members from all over the world. In the last year, we have successfully held several webinars where we've created safe spaces for members to practice presentations for conference talks, practice giving talks in their non-native language. And we've also had panel discussions on improving disability and cultural inclusion in science. And we were also able to acquire the closed captioning that you see today for these Zoom meetings to help bridge the language barrier. We have also organized meetups at every major conference in the last year, expanding our community to other universities in a wide variety of countries. We've been pushing for an expanded SC4 grads in South America. And as of the Chilean meeting earlier this month, we have interest from 7 students who are excited to spearhead a Chilean, Argentinian SC4 grads executive committee. So our future plans hopefully include funding to run some of the skill building activities that we've been brainstorming. We're currently working on an NSF proposal that revolves around a cohort style model where PIs and their students from different universities can collaborate on research, and then they would be required to hold workshops and short courses that would be open to the entire SC4 grads community. We're also organizing our fall webinar series with ideas floating around coding, presenting, or professional skill-based topics, SZ4D themed research talks, and DEI or BECG-based panel discussions. We're also in need of new XCOM members. So a few of our members are moving on to a faculty job or heading into their final year of their PhD, and they need to take a back seat. So we typically utilize the strength of the XCOM members to shape what roles and jobs they play in the committee. So please invite your students to reach out to us or look for a call in the coming weeks. Finally, we have a few sessions at conferences this year that we would like to advertise for. We'd like to advertise for our New Voices in Subduction Zone Science session at GSA this year, featuring Wilnelli Ventura-Valentin and Dr. Irini Pulaki as our invited speakers. We're also going to be holding a session at AGU centered around advancing subduction zone science and cross-cultural collaboration. So please spread the word and let your students know about these sessions when they're considering submitting abstracts. That's everything.
Thank you, Aubrey. And there is the website for SZ4 grads on our SZ4D website. I invite you to visit our website for more information. Their contact is in there. Mark, it's your time. Thank you.
Good. All right. Thanks, Anais. I'll keep this brief because we're already coming up in the hour. My name is Mark Behn. I'm going to be speaking on behalf of the MCS. And as has come up a few times already today, right, modeling is a way that's kind of acts as the glue between lots of different parts of SZ4D. Right, it allows us to transfer knowledge across different subduction zones. It allows us to connect processes across an individual subduction zone, compare processes across different subduction zones. It can help inform the deployment of infrastructure as we start to move to the next phase of SZ4D. And so the MCS integrative group has been kind of working on ways to move the modeling efforts of SZ4D forward. In particular, I just want to highlight a few activities that are going on right now. So as has been mentioned, right, one of the things that we're looking towards now is ways to kind of kickstart these efforts through actual proposals that are funded to start specific modeling activities. And so groups have started to motivate in a few different directions. I've just highlighted a few of these here. There's a group that's working towards developing a rheologic toolbox that could be used for flow laws and frictional properties across subduction zones that is in collaboration with the experimental community and the geologic field community. And that's planned for a geoinformatics submission this December. There's another group that's been looking at effort to couple the three-dimensional geodynamic code aspect with surface processes, toolbox, land lab, and to develop the cyber infrastructure for coupling surface processes with the deeper earth. And with the goal of kind of providing an ability to create a three-dimensional model across subduction zones to provide background information for the long-term thermal conditions, stress conditions that may be important for understanding the predictability of shorter term hazards. Another group has been thinking about proposals for looking at expanding thermodynamic equilibrium modeling, comparing existing codes, coupling with geodynamic codes. And then now that we have some guidance on where we're actually going to be starting to think about, we've got our blobs on map, where we're going to start to put our arrays, how are we going to design them? There's a real need for region-specific modeling. And so that's another goal of the MCS in the near term. We're working to coordinate efforts with other groups that have interests in cyber infrastructure and modeling of subduction zone and geohazards, Crescent, COPE, CLASH, and CCLG, the two landslide track 1 hazard centers. And a lot of these efforts are joint and in collaboration with the CIG and CSDMS. We've been starting to think about ways to improve collaboration with our Chilean colleagues, maybe ways to think on modeling focused workshops or hackathons that can include participants from both US and Chile to transfer knowledge and skills, and also potentially ways to provide mechanisms to give HPC resources to Chilean colleagues who might not have easy availability to such resources. And then the last thing I just want to mention is that we have an upcoming machine learning AI virtual workshop that's going to be hosted in early August. And my last slide here is just highlighting that workshop. And, you know, a lot of the things that I've spoken about up until now have really been kind of physics-based models. But one of the things that was in the implementation plan is the need to start looking at data-driven computational science. And so this workshop is to start some of those efforts. It's to get community input on what AI ML approaches are promising, how can they be best adapted to SZ4D science and SZ4D goals. The workshop will be hosted over a couple of days with different sessions. You can find information on it through either the QR code that's here on this screen, but it's also posted now on the SZ4D website. And I think the first session registration is already available for registering, and I know Anais is working to get the other session registrations up as soon as possible. So I'd really encourage you guys to sign up for that, and we're looking forward to a great turnout. And then just the last thing I'll say, and I'll stop sharing, is, you know, if there's any interest from anyone on this call about getting involved in the modeling side, please reach out to me or any member of MCS, and we would love to have more engagement from the community.
Thanks, Mark. Do you have my last slide though, don't you, Mark?
Oh, sorry, I don't have your, I'm sorry, I got confused by what you asked me to do. I touched the QR code on the last slide.
Oh, okay, that's fine too. So I just hope that I'm here to introduce the survey and try to keep us on time. Mark did have I guess the survey code on his last slide, but if you missed it, I'm at a loss myself, but if somebody, Anais, if you could put that up. I wanted to say that we had a great hour where, thank you, Mark, where a lot of us talked with you, but the link to the survey, it's the QR code here in the top right, or Anais put it in a link in the chat. This is now your opportunity through this 5-question, very short survey to let us know what we could do in the future to make these town halls more accessible, and what information that you want to receive from us about other opportunities, or what you just want to hear back from the SZ4D community. And we really want to make sure that you know that your feedback does matter. I love what Cristian showed about the different voting strategies, because that comes from the community. And so we want to learn from you. So we want the feedback survey to really be an opportunity for you to provide a response and have that that input there. And it's only, again, 5 questions, very easy. Most of them are closed-ended, so it's multiple choice. You can just click, you know, what you need to select. And yeah, so that's all for me.
Well, thank you, everyone, and thank you for joining us. And we managed to do it, and we ended exactly on time. But of course, that was the presentation part, and we had hoped to allow 10 minutes for Q&A at the end. So if you need to leave, by all means, get out of here to your next Zoom meeting. But if anybody would like to stick around, some of us will stick around and be available to answer any questions. Should you like. So Anais, please leave the room open, and let's see if anybody cares to chat. We're here. Otherwise, thank you so much for coming, and thank you everyone for your interest in SZ4D.
There is a question in the Q&A.
Okay, I'm happy to answer that out loud in a moment. I do note that I've answered a number of questions for Emra Alpson already. So if anybody else has another question that they'd like to have answered out loud, just type it into the Q&A and we will do it. Audience, they can't unmute themselves, can they?
No, but there is a new question.
Okay, great.
And it's just, was it recorded? And if so, will you be sharing it on the SZ4D website? Yes, the presentation was recorded and will be posted on our SZ4D YouTube channel soon and available from our SZ4D website.
So Emma is asking generally about industry. Obviously, we are welcome input from people who actually understand the technical details of instrumentation and iteration. We need to do that in an open and transparent manner so that we don't unfairly advantage any particular vendor. And so we are going to work on, as we increase our clarity on what we are asking for, we are going to work on having open venues for that. But coming to this town hall is a great way to start that conversation. So thank you for doing that. And we will continue to have open venues.
Nathaniel is commenting on the report. Nathaniel said it was hard to find the traceability metrics referenced in the study report. Making that easy to find would be helpful.
Thank you for that comment. At this point, perhaps we can elevate it on the links, and thank you for that feedback. Anything else?
Nope.
All right, I hope other comments and questions will come in the survey. You know, putting them in writing, we take those surveys really seriously. And so if you didn't feel like typing it into a Q&A in front of 100 of your friends, put it in the survey, and that would be really helpful.
I'm pasting the link to the survey again in the chat.
All right, I think the conversation has come to a close. I am sensing. So thank you very much, and hope to see you another SZ4D or other activity sometime soon. Take care.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.